Alright, this video will be on turn 4 of the Ir0n Wars. You see it says pre-turn 5 up there. It's because they've wrapped up turn 4. This is now, I'll be showing you the actions which have happened in turn 4. So, Westerford mostly just dug in. Didn't really do a whole lot. Saving up points, reinforcing the armor brigades. Pretty standard maneuvers. They did take a lot of land over here in the southeast of Velikostan near Lo, Bogansk, and Nakashville. They recaptured that. So, because Velikostan had a massive fallback maneuver. Now, there were two battles. There were two battles divvied up into 3 Steel Division battles. Here, this unit was down here. These were here. This was about right there. In Jollington. And the 12th Tank Corps, 4th Elite Marines, and the Hunter Killer Group all converged on the Stormtrooper unit was holding that river in the, what is that, Vlading Sea. The 25th Stormtrooper Commanders decided that it would be a good idea to try to retreat, but unfortunately for them, they were caught by the 4th Elite Marines and the 12th Tank Corps, and the Hunter Killer Group was not fast enough to catch up. And that will be this battle I'm about to show you. In this battle, the Nordwalde were very much outnumbered. Very little troops compared to Velikostan. In fact, it was a 4-to-1 advantage for Velikostan. The Nordwalde commander did a very good job of setting up AT guns in strategic positions to hold off the enemies of the Nordwalde 25th very efficiently. There were some early air kills, as you saw. The Me-410 took down a Scout Spitfire. Velikostan had heavy tank corps pushing this Nordwalde unit, which only had mostly anti-tank guns and infantry. In these early stages of battle, there were large gaps in the Nordwalde lines. That is to be expected when they have very little troops. A violent tank push by Velikostan was successfully thwarted by the Nordwalde. 25th Sturm had many infantry platoons coming up in order to defend their stugs efficiently, allowing them to kill their enemy tanks as easily as possible. Nordwalde flamethrowers were vital in securing the well-guarded forest from Velikostan. Clashes around the small village surrounding the river. Many deaths on both sides. Nordwalde eventually had to evac from the entire village. By this point in the battle, the Nordwalde lines were getting very thin. It was important to the 25th Sturm that they find a way to close these gaps quickly before they are overwhelmed by Velikostani forces. Velikostan had incredible T-34 pushes into secured Nordwalde positions, taking large swaths of land, but the Nordwalde did counter this by only taking minimal casualties against Velikostan. These thug platoons were sent into the city as a last-ditch effort to hold the line from the Velikostani hordes. Scattered pack guns and smattered infantry squads were all that was left of the 25th Sturm's front line while the rest of the division retreated. And that was the battle between the 25th Sturm defending against multiple different Velikostani, the 4th Elite and the 12th Tank Corps. And that ended up retreating more farther north, whilst Velikostan recaptured their claimed territory. Now, this next battle, here's a preface. All of these divisions were up here like so. The Nordwalde High Command saw a brilliant maneuver, seeing that there was a gap in the Velikostani lines. They decided they would push with everything they had, collapsing onto the right flank. The 5th King's Guard was attacked directly by 3 different divisions, and it did indeed get support from the 184th and the 2nd King's Guard, but was it enough to hold the line? This next battle was the 134th Tartelek and Gunther's Ghost collapsing on the 5th King's Guard, but luckily for them, they did indeed get the support of the 184th Rifles. That was actually incorrect. They got the support of the 2nd King's Guard, which was wholly dedicated to holding the front line, but since it was so far down the line, they could only get there in Phase B or possibly Phase C. The 184th Rifle Corps will be shown next battle in the other side of this battle when the 92nd Infantry collapsed on the 5th King's Guard and the 184th. Norwalde knew they had a numbers advantage here, so they pushed the Velikostan fortified positions with all of their might, pounding them with artillery, ensuring that they had no chance to hold. The Velikostan knew that, though, they could possibly have reinforcements later in the battle. But would they be effective if their soldiers are already dead when they get there? The Norwalde made great use of captured Velikostani tanks in this battle, repurposing them for their own uses. Velikostan did have some small artillery guns firing from their back line in order to try to support their frontline infantry as much as they possibly could before the Norwalde collapsed in on them. Assault guns such as the Panzer IIIN were vital in taking out the bunkers of the Velikostani. The Velikostani tank ace Ir0n and his personal platoon of T-34-85s were on the field ready to dominate whatever were going to be thrown at them. Tartalik infantry sacrificed many lives this day in order to capture just feeble land from the Velikostani. Was it all worth it? The tank ace Ir0n saw that the battle was lost and retreated to fight on the other side of the line, where it was more feasible to achieve victory. Velikostan still had a very heavy presence in the center of the town. Velikostan still had a very heavy presence in the center of the town when the Norwalde were launching their assaults. Street-to-street fighting was not uncommon during this defense. There were massive air battles in the skies. The air forces of the Norwalde and Velikostan played key roles in this battle. This battle also saw early uses of Velikostani heavy tanks such as the IS-244. Velikostan realized that they were outnumbered and needed to retreat. The forces left in the town laid down their lives and sacrificed themselves in order to fight for their country to the death. This battle had heavy losses on both sides, notably the 97th and the Tartalik. So this battle resulted in a lot of pushback there, although there's still one more battle here to be had. The 5th King's Guard, supported by the 184th, defending against the 92nd Infantry, which at the time had way more than 15 points. They had about, I think, 40 at the time of the battle. As you can see, they're going to take heavy losses. This battle is a pretty long one, so we're going to go over it in fastest speed once it begins and kind of go over it play by play instead of highlights. I know you guys might prefer the highlights, but they're pretty tiring, not gonna lie, pretty tiring. Although, I'm being a jackass, so who really cares? This battle saw the 184th Rifle Division doing most of the frontline work, with the 1st Tank Company from the 5th King's Guard supporting where they could. Here's direct visual evidence of the 1st Tank Company's T-34s working with the 184th Mechanized Infantry. Imaged here is a 1st Tank Company T-34 working with motorized infantry from the 184th. This forest was to be theirs. Norwalde flamethrowers once again played an extremely annoying role for the Velikostan tanks and vehicles. Here we have Ir0n in his T-34-85 tank with his tank platoon that he managed to escape from the front line of the battle to the rear line, and all he did was get caught in another battle. Velikostan utilized many tanks that they bought from Westerford before the war, only a few years before, in 855. For reference, the current year is 867. These tanks, whilst outdated, were still moderately effective in the battlefield due to the great technological down period of 857 to 867. Tanks like these were very old by this point, but were still viable in the battlefield due to the technological downturn of 857 to 863. This battle was a slog, seeing even more use of heavy tanks and light infantry, working together to take out enemies. Even the Nordwalde had vehicles stolen from Westerford. During their small clashes in the northeast, they found them, repurposed from tractors. This battle was especially brutal, especially for that 92nd Infantry, losing 2,500 men, which is equal to about 25 activation points, which is more than half of its total size. So these were the battles, which ultimately resulted in what was happening here. Nordwalde taking land, losing land, and Westford gaining land because they have yet to take a fat L, except for the assault up here. That was a fat L. It was a pretty fat one. But yeah, a lot of clashes between Nordwalde and Velikostan now, and actually, as I speak, the factions are discussing their next turn. Thanks for watching. See ya.